There's a new sheriff in town. Welcome on in to Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, who, of course, is... Where is Matthew Berry? We're not quite sure. No, he is going to be joining the show in hopefully momentarily or at some point. But I'm Julie Stewart-Binks. I'm going to be steering the ship, at least for the next little while, alongside the betting man himself, the guru, Jay Croucher. And we have so much great stuff to get to. Of course, it is Waiver Wire Wednesday. Lots of action going on. And we will be heading into the Rotoworld headlines. So let's get to those, and we begin with Kenneth Walker. And he is going to be playing in Week 2. We know that this will be his NFL debut. He was an absolute beast at Michigan State. But what does this mean for Rashad Penny?
Not great, because Rashad Penny, the game against the Broncos, that should have gone as well as any game could have gone for Rashad Penny in terms of game script. Geno Smith cooking early, puts the chef hat on, and you think that the rest of the game, once they have the lead, is going to be the Rashad Penny show. And look what he did. 12 rushing attempts for 60 yards, 2 receptions, 7 receiving yards, no touchdowns, and a fumble. I mean, this was the game where he should have had 25 rushing attempts, where he should have put up the numbers that he was at the end of last season. And now you have Kenneth Walker coming in, and the Seahawks love Kenneth Walker.
They love him.
They took him early. Pete Carroll's talking about how he could, he could be out there this week and potentially, when he's fully healthy, he'll be playing all 3 downs. So I think you have to worry a little bit about Rashad Penny, who at some point is going to get injured, because that's what Rashad Penny does for fun.
There's just a timeline of at what point does this happen in the season? But you have to think about with Kenny Walker. I mean, is this guy? We know that he hasn't played yet, but is he still in the contention of being Rookie of the Year?
Definitely, just because everyone's in contention, that market is a complete mess. Jahan Dotson right now is the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jahan Dotson might be the 3rd wide receiver for Carson Wentz, depending on how you feel about Curtis Samuel. So he's definitely not the number 1 guy. So I think that the market is wide open. I think that guys like Kenneth Walker, who's 25-1 right now for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Breece Hall, both of those guys are 1 injury away from literally being the favorite for the award. So it's completely wide open. I would still be looking at the quarterbacks in that market, just because quarterbacks win every award that they're eligible for, really. And so looking at guys like Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, who I expect will start at some point, they're starting to drift in the market a little bit.
But you have to think with Kenny Walker for this week, if he's coming off of an injury, he's not going to be getting that much volume when you're looking at Rashad Penny. You shouldn't be that worried if you have Rashad Penny.
I agree. I do think I would be a little bit concerned that the Seahawks are 9.5-point underdogs to San Francisco, which no respect for the Seahawks, first of all.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
can't
saw
get no respect.
San Francisco didn't look very good in Chicago. Trey Lance did not look like a guy.
Though.
The weather was a factor there, but I would be a little bit concerned that I'm not sure they're going to have as many opportunities to run the ball. And even when they did against the Broncos, they were still passing. They were still letting Geno be the guy there and not Rashad Penny, which is a bit surprising.
Right. Well, we will be excited to see what goes down with that game. And we'll be talking about Trey Lance later on in the program. Another guy that we have our eyes on, and he is unlikely to play in Week 2, is Keenan Allen for the Chargers. But what does this mean for the other guys on the roster, especially Josh Palmer? And if you have him in your lineup, is he a must start?
I think so, because he ran the 2nd most routes of all Chargers receivers against the Raiders. He's going to get opportunities. He's going to be on the field, and he balled out last year when Keenan Allen was out and also when Mike Williams was out. So he's shown that he can produce when given the opportunity. And this is what without Keenan last year. So Josh Palmer, in the game that Keenan Allen missed, 62 of 66 snaps, lines up in the slot and out wide and in line. Ran 33 routes on 35 Justin Herbert dropbacks, and he had a team-high 7 targets for a 22% share, 5 receptions, 66 yards, 1 touchdown. So I think the thing that I'm really interested in this game is, are you just going to give Justin Herbert the keys? Why are they running the ball 31 times? You've got Justin Herbert. He's really good. And
yeah,
we'd like to see him air it out a bit.
Sources say he's pretty good out there.
I think so.
And even sources say that I spoke to today were telling me that, Chargers camp is very, very hot on Josh Palmer, and they want him, or they've noticed that he's been developing a lot of chemistry with Herbert. But you also have to think about how many other guys there are that are potential targets for Herbert. I mean, we will talk about him in a second, but a guy like Mike Williams, we want to see a bounce back situation. Austin Eckler, DeAndre Carter. There's Gerald Everett.
There's a lot of names.
There's a lot of names.
I think Mike Williams, he's the guy on the Chargers, and I wouldn't be worried about the fact that he had so little production against the Raiders. Last year in his first game against the Raiders, he had 1 catch for 11 yards, and he was fine the rest of the season. Look, in this game, the Chargers, they're 4.5-point underdogs. So we're expecting that they might be behind, they might be throwing the ball. They're not going to run the ball 31 times against the Chiefs, you would expect. And Mike Williams should be the big beneficiary for that.
Right, because if he had a down week in week 1 and he's a roller coaster, unless he's like the Tower of Terror and there's that extra drop coming.
Gravity dictates.
Yeah, he's probably going to go up. That's what we think in terms of this analogy. And we know that this game is happening on Thursday. Chargers taking on the Chiefs. You mentioned the line there that the Chiefs are 4.5-point favorites. Why?
Yeah, this is surprising to most because it opened at 3.5. It's already pushed up to 4.5. A lot of sharp people are betting on the Chiefs. Now, a lot of that is because Keenan Allen is probably going to miss, and then also J.C. Jackson, who is their best cornerback on the Chargers, is maybe going to play, maybe not. He might be limited if he does play. The total in this game is 54.5, so expecting a lot of scoring, a lot of yards, a lot of fantasy points going around. But yeah, I think this is a reflection of just how incredible Patrick Mahomes looked against Arizona, despite not having Tyreek Hill. Doesn't matter, he's fine. Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, whoever is out there are going to produce. Travis Kelce was a monster, and Mahomes, I think Mahomes should be the MVP favorite.
All right, that is an overhype of week 1, though, but I love it.
Yeah, Arizona, they're not much, and the Chargers are going to give them more resistance, but Patrick Mahomes, I think these are the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL on Thursday night.
Oh, wow, well,
Sorry, Josh Allen.
Yeah, I was going to say, another can't get no respect, Josh Allen. He's someone I've got my eye on because I absolutely thought he did incredible last week in week 1, as so many quarterbacks did, though. It was kind of actually a mixed bag of quarterbacks. But when you do look at this, could you say that you're overvaluing someone like Mahomes after a week 1? I mean, he had 5 touchdowns, but
he's going to get more resistance against the Chargers defense, which is all of a sudden loaded with or without J.C. Jackson. Like Khalil Mack was a monster with 3 sacks opposite Joey Bosa. I think Derwin James might win Defensive Player of the Year this year. He's the ultimate Swiss Army knife. And he's such a luxury where you can use him as a pass rusher, you can use him as a safety, as a cornerback. He can do everything, so it's not going to be as easy for Mahomes.
Right.
And that Arizona secondary might be the worst in the league. That team is a disaster right now, and that line has moved significantly against them this week. So I don't think Mahomes is going to have the stats he did against Arizona, but at the same time, the whole point of Patrick Mahomes is that he's kind of like defense agnostic. It doesn't matter what the defense is because Patrick Mahomes is too good.
I love that term. Okay, so you did, though, mention over-under set at 54.5. Why do you think this is going to be such a potentially high-scoring game? And maybe that might have to do with one of the coaches involved.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of aggressiveness on 4th down with Brandon Staley, as famously he did last year against the Chiefs, going for it on 4th and 9. Look, the total is high because it's Justin Herbert and it's Patrick Mahomes. And when you think about totals, you should always think about them relative to 48 points. 48 is the average for a total, so 54.5, expecting almost a touchdown above average, which makes sense when you have those 2 quarterbacks. I would actually skew a little bit towards the under, just because I think that both of these defenses might be better than anticipated. And also, if Brandon Staley is going to keep Justin Herbert locked in the shed and just run the ball constantly, that's going to bleed clock as well.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move on to the Patriots. They've placed Ty Montgomery on IR, and we're curious how this move helps either Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson more? Who do you think?
I would skew towards Ramondre Stevenson. I just think he has more scope, more upside to have a true 3-down role. I don't feel good about anyone on this team, though.
Yeah, it's a tough backfield.
I don't feel good about even beyond the backfield. I mean, you don't look like any of the receivers, the tight ends. Don't really like Mac Jones. I do think the Patriots, I think Arizona are a disaster. I don't think the Patriots are a disaster like they showed in week 1. I think that Mac Jones was just about the most unlucky quarterback in week 1 in terms of drop passes. He has a tipped pass in the end zone that gets intercepted. So I think that the Patriots are better than they showed. They're 1.5-point favorites in Pittsburgh, which I think surprises some people. I mean, do you think Pittsburgh should be favored in that game?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially not only based on how they did in week 1, but just, again, going up against the Patriots.
Black and yellow.
Yeah.
Go Steelers.
Yes, I've obviously just my Steelers nation coming out right here on the show. I'm Canadian. We have a little Commonwealth action going on here.
We cancelled Matthew's visa.
Yes.
He's off the show.
Okay, well, let's look at the running back usage in week 1. And when we see this, we check things out with the Patriots. And yeah, I've been watching the show, I got to tell you. I know Matthew makes a joke that you guys are going to get canceled and all this stuff. I'm always like, no. I'm watching. And I was surprised because I really wanted Ramondre Stevenson in my draft. I ended up with Damian Harris.
Okay.
And I was not too upset about that.
No, and I think, look, Matthew and I both loved Ramondre Stevenson in the preseason just because we thought he had more upside, but week to week there's absolutely a chance that Damian Harris is the guy that you want based on what happened in week 1. He was the guy that you want in terms of his offensive snaps. It was just a weird game against Miami. The Patriots, they kept on getting stopped at like the Miami 40, so they're just outside where you'd want to be. So I think the Patriots will bounce back. I think this is going to be a kinder game script for them. And the thing about the Steelers is, yes, they got the win. They also needed 5 Joe Burrow turnovers and 2 chip shot missed field goals, including an extra point, just to win the game in overtime. The Steelers are not very good.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Bengals momentarily, but when you do have to keep that in mind, that the script could be completely flipped if Evan McPherson had made some of those field goals. If anyone had him on their fantasy roster, maybe a friend of mine or someone would have remembered that. Definitely. Money Mack.
Running short of change.
Yeah, well, there's some more news coming out of the 49ers here with Marlon Mack being signed to the practice squad. So we know he was released by the Texans in the preseason. It's busy there. Dameon Pierce, Rex Burkhead. But now the Niners have added some veteran experience to the room. When you see this move, how does it make you feel about the Niners rookie running backs?
My point here would be that if you're losing time to Marlon Mack, then you're probably not that good anyway, honestly. So here's the depth chart. Jeff Wilson, he's clearly the guy that you want. He's the number 1 pickup on waivers. He's going to replace the workload that Elijah Mitchell had. Elijah Mitchell, with the MCL, is out for 8 weeks on IR. And then Davis Price, Jordan Mason, Marlon Mack. I don't really want any part of Marlon Mack, but the younger guys, I think they're stash candidates. And then if something happens to Jeff Wilson, because we know how much Kyle Shanahan loves to run the ball. It's like his identity is running the ball and how creatively he does it. But Jeff Wilson is absolutely the guy. And I think that the Niners are going to be a lot better than what they showed at the slip and slide in Chicago. They are 9.5-point favorites against Seattle, so expect they would be running the ball.
What do you think of that line? Is that where you would expect it, or is that high?
It's a lot of respect for Trey Lance, who didn't show much. Even in the conditions, he did not look good. And the concern about the Niners, I think, even more than Trey Lance, is that offensive line just might be bad. They were getting trucked by Chicago defense, which isn't exactly the 85 Bears. And outside of Trent Williams, I think you do have to be a little bit concerned about that. You have to be concerned that George Kittle may not play in this game again. And 9.5, not much respect for the great Geno Smith after what he showed.
I thought we were all team Geno Smith after this.
Yeah,
ain't right back.
I think that Geno Smith showed that he has a higher ceiling than I think anyone thought. He started again 13 for 13, 100 yards and a touchdown. And the way I would get involved in this game is the total, which is 42.5.
Okay.
So you only need, you only need like 16 points out of Seattle to go over that total in terms of what the line projects. So I think Geno Smith can score 16 points against the 49ers, who have a good defense, particularly in the run game. But like, I think that Geno is going to be able to put up points. And
he did benefit a lot from the Broncos, though, on the 1 yard line.
He did benefit a lot from the Broncos. Should have won that game by 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
So I don't think the Seahawks are very good. I don't think that defense is good at all, because the Broncos, they should have scored 30 points in that game. Somehow they only get 16, and that's good news for Jeff Wilson, for Trey Lance. Trey Lance doesn't play well in this game, it's time to sound the alarm, because this isn't a good Seattle defense.
Oh man, okay. Well, that's tough. You're right, especially after what we saw and what we know. If this is the game where you say, if maybe you have another quarterback on that your bench, that maybe you would play. I don't know. JJ, if you had Ryan Tannehill on your bench, if you were someone and you're playing Trey Lance, we got to give Trey Lance somewhat of a leash.
I think so.
He's a young guy. He's coming. He has pressure not only on the field, but breathing down his neck in the locker room.
Not an ideal spot for Trey Lance. I do think that there was a lot of thought that Trey Lance, he would just come in and he would be like Lamar Jackson's MVP season, Patrick Mahomes' MVP season. Guys that started the season, those seasons with similar odds to Trey Lance this year. After week 1, not sure he has that upside in him straight away. I think there's going to be growing pains. But I do think that the Niners ultimately will be okay. I do think they just have so much talent. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I
was going to say, there's one guy you hadn't mentioned yet, Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and I mean, he might be their primary running back and their primary wide receiver, as the joke goes. But I do think that they will ultimately be fine. But it'll be changing that assessment if they don't beat Seattle pretty handily this weekend. And
seeing how their injuries do, how George Kittle does, and if Deebo Samuel can also have a bit of a bounce-back game. Great job on everything there, my friend. We have more to come here on Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay, respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.